Miami, 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 Miami. It feels like Miami.
Welcome to Miami Heat Beat Podcast, Free Agent Edition. I'm your host, Giancarlo Navas. With me today, Franky G. What's up, my man?
I am opting out of my Miami Heat Beat contract. I am available for the mid-level exception.
We'll give you a little bit more than mid-level. We got this. We'll get this done. Trust in the Miami Heat Beat front office. We'll get this done. We'll get this done and bring in some free agents this summer. Shout out to chat. Thank you for rocking with us on this wonderful, very hot Sunday afternoon. If you're on the East Coast of the States or even anywhere in the States, I think it's pretty hot right now. Shout out to everybody. Duncan Robinson opts out of his ETO. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Davion Mitchell deal, what we expect the Heat to do, and kind of where their cap situation's at. Chat says, I look recharged, ready to go. I went to Jeezy's concert on Friday. I'm so excited. That really revived me. I found joy again in life. The 20th anniversary of Thug Motivation 101, my favorite record of all time. Incredible show. Shout out to Jeezy. Shout out to the fucking GOAT.
You being such a Jeezy diehard is like my favorite fun fact about you. Dude,
I was there. I know that album entirely front to back. I'm there arm in arm with people in my section. We're rapping. We're having a great time. My girlfriend's like, I've never seen you this happy. And I'm like, this is what it is. I've seen she's watched me watch my team win a championship. And I was happier that day.
That's what it's all about.
It's what it's all about.
It's what it's all about.
It's what it's all about. And for what else is what it's all about? Caponomics. Duncan Robinson opting out. Franky, we're gonna start here because that's the big news of the day. I was a little surprised because Duncan opting out insinuates a couple things. It would insinuate that either he is going to get traded somewhere, probably. I don't think because Duncan Robinson to explain to the audience the structure of Robinson's deal, he had an opt-out, a player option. It's called an early termination option. Essentially, it functions as a player option. He could opt out of his $19 million for this season. However, that $19 million was not guaranteed. The Heat could cut that Duncan Robinson, and they would save about only $9 million of that 19 was guaranteed. So if they cut him, the Heat would save $10 million. So there was kind of a thing. It's like, well, the Heat want to get under the luxury tax. They were about $7 million over the tax after signing Davion Mitchell, 8 to 6, depending on the figures, that are still murky, that are still coming out. So they're kind of within that ballpark. And if the Heat were to cut Duncan Robinson, they would save because of that guaranteed money. Robinson opts out, doesn't put that decision in the Heat's hands. Which I believe was by the 9th that they had that decision to make, or the 15th. I don't remember, some date in July, early July. So now what we have, Robinson's an unrestricted free agent. Miami has his bird rights, and Franky, that could mean he is going to get signed and traded somewhere because there's only 2 teams with cap space. Detroit has $16 million, and the Brooklyn Nets have about $40 million. The mid-level exception is about 14-ish million, which is what Miami could actually offer him, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. Franky, this is a reality. Those are kind of his options.
Yeah, I think definitely conversations that we're not privy to have been had for him to opt out of that money, even with the partial guarantee. I'm sure the market's he's got to have other options for the mid-level exception for some contenders, or at least part of it, just to have that opt out of that deal and guaranteed money. Because he could have gotten waived, taken the guarantee, the 9.8 or 10 million, whatever it was, and then signed something else on top of that. So yeah, he left some money on the table.
Pretty much.
Otherwise.
Not to cut you off, Franky. Pretty much anything less than $10 million. He was going to leave, right? Because he was like, the 9 guaranteed, and what Franky said, even at his years of experience, we're talking $2-3 million for a minimum.
Yeah, exactly. And like Duncan's still a good player, and veteran teams would absolutely fucking want him in their rotation, especially the contenders. So I'm very surprised as well. I'm very curious what happens if we've seen the last of Duncan Robinson in a Miami Heat uniform.
Yeah, so teams with a mid-level, you have Atlanta who have the full non-taxpayer mid-level, which is about 14.1. You have the Bulls have the mid-level.
And
You the
most teams
Warriors,
aren't going to want to use the full mid level because if you use the full, it
you have
does
hard cap.
hard cap. So
So the Warriors, the Hawks are a team. The Warriors are kind of interesting if they want to spend and get Jimmy and Duncan back together.
United.
But there's not that many teams that have the full mid-level. A lot of them have the taxpayer mid-level. So the Oklahoma City Thunder have a non-taxpayer mid-level exception. But I don't think he makes a ton of sense there. The Sixers are going to be able to offer him. The Blazers,
They love former Miami Heat players.
the Sacramento Kings, the Spurs. That's an interesting team that could
That
offer
is
that. The Raptors, the Jazz. I don't think that would be in the business for that, considering they just traded Sexton and they're trying to clear up guard space. The Wizards, who are low key kind of cooking. So those are the teams that are going to be able to offer him that $14 million. And I think that $14 million figure is kind of important if you're Miami, because they're almost exactly $14 million below the luxury tax. And they have 14 players on the roster, including their draft pick, Jaku. Drew Smith was extended a qualifying offer for his final year that he has eligible for a two-way player. Shout out to Franky for clearing that up for us here on Heat Beat. Brian was even confused, and Franky got us locked down on that. So Duncan would be, if Duncan signs here, he'd be the 15th man, and Miami could give him about a $14 million contract. So the figure that I think Duncan re-signing with the team would be 3 for 40, which puts him at about 13 mil a year with $8 million increases annually. So you can go a little bit below. You almost get to like 12 and a half. And that way you have a little bit of wiggle room for the Heat. That could make sense. Mm-hmm. As we just talked about, Duncan's going to have suitors, but Miami's going to be able to offer them pretty much what he would get anywhere else. Miami also has his bird rights. He likes it here. I think it's most likely that he stays and signs something like a 3-year, $40 million contract. I've heard other people say 3-year lower. I've seen 3 for 33. I don't think he takes anything that low. I think it's going to be somewhere in the range of 3 for 37 to 3 for 40.
No, I completely agree, and I'm sure they're probably also looking to see what other teams are interested in the sign and trade first, to see that maybe they get something back, as we've heard with other deals that they're discussing. Which I think, I love Duncan. I know he's important to the team, but this is with the roster as it is, the Heat situation as it is, Duncan's age and back injury history also suppose a reluctancy to play him at times. And rely on him for more than like 20 minutes a game. I think it's very smart if the Heat are looking for other options to move him, help him get to another place, sign and trade if they have to. And he's, like we said, he'd absolutely help a contender out. Spark plug off the bench with his shooting, movement shooting. Good team defender, takes charges, underrated playmaker. Tons of teams could use a guy like him.
Franky, would you be surprised if I told you Duncan Robinson was 4th on the team in minutes last season?
Total minutes?
Total minutes.
Would not surprise me.
Herro, Adebayo, 1 and 2, Highsmith 3, and Duncan Robinson 4.
Terry not being there is surprising.
Terry's 5th.
There you go.
Terry's 5th, and then Hawkins and Jovic, and then Mitchell somehow is over other guys.
Suppose he got to be an accessory for a federal investigation.
Davion Mitchell played more minutes last season for the Heat than Jimmy Butler did.
I believe it.
That's actually crazy. Davion Mitchell played 947 minutes, and Jimmy Butler played 700.
Pell Larson played more minutes than Jimmy.
Yeah, well, at least he was here all year. You know what I mean?
That's fair. That's fair.
That's pretty funny. So yeah. So I think the Duncan thing is going to really kind of dictate a lot of their offseason, Franky, because if Duncan does stay, he would be the 15th guy on the roster, which means anything that they do from that point is going to be two-way contracts, and not only two-way contracts or trades. Right. And we could talk about where Wiggins could head out. We could talk about where Rozier can head out. We could talk about all that stuff. But Duncan Robinson, I think, is front and center right now. And you're right. They're gonna. I would hope that they test the market, they make some calls and see who wants that. I understand, and I think a lot of fans are going to be really mad at them. I actually understand. Like they're not going to be good this year. I think they know in the building that they're not going to be very good this year, and I don't think like a team that's going to like suck that much, they should probably be under the tax. Not even to save the ownership money, but genuinely the repeater tax is what breaks teams up. Now the aprons, but the repeater tax plus aprons. I mean, you look at what Boston's doing. Boston is resetting because of how bad that repeater tax is, how devastating these aprons are, and they saw an opportunity to start shedding money and stuff, and that's what they started doing. So I don't blame them for trying to get under the tax this season. I think it's probably like the smart move long term, and I think that should be a goal for them because I think if they are going to commit to building a real contender, they're going to have to be in the tax, and they don't want to get their repeater taxes, I think 3 out of 4 years or something like that. So you really want to kind of duck that figure as long as you can before you actually have to start paying. And those years count toward the repeater tax, which are incredibly punitive. So, Franky, I, for one, would like Duncan Robinson to stay. I think if they can sign him, trade him for something below that $14 million figure, I think that's great. I don't know how realistic that is. I would like some draft equity and an expiring contract. I don't, I don't even know if he's worth a first at this point. Maybe if he signs the extension for something like 3 years at a really nice figure, but unless they can get something like good for him, like I don't know if I'd even take I'd probably take 2 seconds.
I take seconds in a trade exception, even though the Heat don't use trade exceptions really.
Which they have one. They have a $60 million trade exception from the Butler trade.
Yeah, but if you can trade Duncan into a trade exception, I'd be fine with that too. Like just with picks coming back,
a first or 3 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, or like a young player that's like a bottom of the bench doesn't get minutes with them. Like that's fine. Like they just need to.
You wouldn't be able to do that and the trade exception. It would have to be like
right. It would one or the other. Yeah, but I'm just giving an example. Like I give a wide range of options for them. Yeah, they like I understand. I wouldn't mind Duncan coming back, especially because they need the shooting, but. I think it's just time to get your books in order. And even if you're not seriously using 2026 free agency as a thing anymore, Duncan's just just at that age where, I would rather them try to find the next Duncan instead of, keep paying this Duncan and let him go.
Let me make the argument for signing him. That's not on court stuff. Although everybody knows how much I like him on the court. I think he'll be more valuable at the deadline.
That's fair.
Because that's when teams are going to know how close they are. Maybe a team, like Detroit is like, we are a shooter away from really unlocking our offense. Or, a team like Denver, who we've talked about a lot. There's going to be a lot of teams, and I think people keep telling me in my Twitter mentions, the East is weak. The Heat have to go for it. The East is weak. The East is weak. And they're right. The East is weak. The Celtics are really taking a year off. The Pacers are not going to have Tyrese Halliburton all year. Obviously, he's so important to what they do. And I think those teams are still going to be competitive, but they're not dominating the conference. And you're left with the Knicks. You know what I mean? You're left with the Cavs, who are really good, but have kind of had embarrassing second round outs. You have a young Detroit Pistons team. You know what I mean? Like there's certainly like a vacuum of power right now in the Eastern Conference. And Orlando is another team that's been kind of going for it lately. And if you're Miami, those teams are going to start getting desperate at the deadline, and you have to leverage that. And I think Duncan Robinson could be a valuable asset. Haywood Highsmith could be a valuable asset to some of those teams kind of going into the deadline, which is kind of like my thing of like, okay, you keep them. They're on good deals. Davion Mitchell is on an incredible deal for 2 years. Duncan Robinson is going to be on an incredible deal if he stays here because it's going to be something to keep them under the tax. Like we said, that 3 for 40 deal, something like that. That's going to be really valuable to a lot of teams, especially when they have like short-term years, 2 to 3 years, really attractive for teams that are trying to go for it. Especially that's going to fall within every of those teams that we just talked about window. And Franky, their salary situation, they need some diversity. So Bam makes $37 million. Tyler makes $31 million. Wiggins makes 28. Rozier makes 26. And after that, the next highest guy is 9, which is Kyle Anderson. You don't have any mid-sized contracts to move. And we just saw Colin Sexton, who makes $18 million, was traded with a second-round pick because Utah wanted to clear up a logjam at guard. Miami could not get into that game. They can't trade Rozier over there, and they can't trade Kyle Anderson over there. So what you're left with is you don't have something to trade. Utah's not going to take back more money. You know what I mean? They just want to clear up a logjam. I think that signing him makes sense. You need to start accumulating movable, attractive contracts for good players that you can move later and actually sell, not hold on to your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is operating in a way they usually don't. So I definitely get the argument for keeping him if you're looking to sell at the deadline. And that's not a bad option, especially with how poor the free agent market is. A lot of teams are going to be searching for help and really only have the trade market to get better. But it's on the Heat too. Like, the Heat have to adapt. We've talked about their adapting in philosophies. Sometimes they get to the point where they think about selling and the price isn't exactly what they want. They don't want just seconds and stuff. Sometimes that's just got to be reality, and it's just got to be accept that and take that deal. We see how valuable those second round picks come for trades. They used 4 of them in the Jimmy Butler trade just to help grease the wheels and get stuff done. So I think accumulating assets any way possible, Duncan now or for later, is absolutely a good argument.
You're right. They need to start acting in this way. They need to start acting smart. They need to be able to move guys and stuff like that. And listen, they're stuck. They're stuck. And the way that they can get out of this is they've done a good job of collecting guys, of developing guys that are good. Haywood Highsmith is a really good basketball player who they have really stuck with him and worked with him, and he's put in the work, and they've kind of helped him develop and become the guy he is. Duncan Robinson is another guy, and you can't just lose those guys for nothing. They lost Gabe Vincent for nothing. They got a second-round pick for Max Strus, who is helping teams be really, really good in your conference. And then
that pick is already gone too.
Chat's like, what does really good mean? They are high-level role players.
Yeah.
Those guys contribute to winning. Like, you cannot like the team. Like, the team's problems are not with Haywood Highsmith and Duncan Robinson. Those guys produce. You know what I mean? Like, Gabe Vincent and Max Strus were high-level role players. Like, they're really good. Like, they're really good at their role. Obviously, they're not, Kevin Durant, prime Kevin Durant, or Dwayne Wade or something like that, but like really good in the context of like their role as role players. And
Bubba Gogi.
Yeah. And listen, Chad is justifiably spectacle. Tank season 2024 says, guys, we've been saying sign tradable contracts for years and years, and guess what? They're unable to move these guys without attaching picks. You're not wrong, but some of these contracts they never even tried to move.
But also some of those contracts that they're doing were just they were trying to overpay a guy so they could fill in the cap. With those, that was the Myers Leonards, the Dwayne Dedmans when they re-signed them. They get the Victor Oladipos. They're gave them a little bit
players,
right? They just dead salary. Just say, hey, we don't have many mid-sized contracts. We can use Victor Oladipo's $10 million to get to the spot we need. Those contracts are absolutely useless because those guys.
Nobody wants them.
Those are salary fillers. That's what, but they provide nothing on the court.
Nothing.
And those 3 are the biggest examples because they did have to trade stuff to get off of those deals at the deadline, and that's really cost them. But the other deals, they've either waited too long and not sold high, and then the value's been gone, like the most of the 30 and 11 squad, or. They just kept them. They just kept it pass and let them walk in free agency.
Duncan Robinson, a 39% shooter on 7 attempts. Yeah, that's really good. And he can make tough threes. He could be on the move. Like, he could shoot off the dribble. He can make pass. Like, that guy's useful. That guy's helpful. And if he's here, I think he could play with Jaku. Crab says Haywood Highsmith is a Rodney Magruder of PJ Tucker's. That is accurate. I will not dispute that. That is 100% accurate.
I'll take
I
it.
do.
Though. Haywood's.
I
Better
do
than
like
Rodney.
Haywood Highsmith, who's also making nothing. He's making $5.6 million
Yeah.
next season. Again, really attractive to a team. They can fit him under a hard cap or something or whatever. That's a very manageable deal to trade, and you don't have to take back a lot of salary. It makes it easy.
He could slide into so many trade exceptions. That's
Yeah.
very reasonable.
Yeah, you could get. I'm sure that they'll be able to get something for him at the deadline if they choose to go that way. So let's kind of zoom out, Frankie, for a second. We've talked about Robinson. We're gonna get into Davion's contract, which is looking like a $12 million cap hit next season.
Yep.
Miami's $14 million below the luxury tax. They're $19 million below the first apron, and they have access to their non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is $14 million. They're not going to use their MLE on Duncan Robinson because when you use the mid-level exception, it hard caps you and there's a lot of rules. But they'll give him money that is similar to that because they have his bird right, so they'll be able to sign him and do all that stuff. They have a $60 million trade exception, as I said earlier, from the Jimmy Butler trade that there's just no way that they're going to use. And they have 13 players under contract. 14 players under contract with a qualifying offer for Drew Smith for a two-way deal. Duncan Robinson would be the 15th man, which kind of means that if they keep Duncan, then that their free agency, quote unquote, is over.
Barring any trades.
I mean, like free agency, like signing and using a mid-level or doing something or letting guys go. Yeah. So really, Alec Burke out the door. Their free agents this year are Duncan Robinson, Alec Burks, Drew Smith, Isaiah Stevens, and Josh Christopher. Those guys all going home. Nothing Miami could do. And yeah, Frankie, that's kind of where they're at. That's like kind of the big zoom out picture of their offseason.
I think also they need to be a little bit realistic about their options. Like if Terry's not valuable, use his salary as filler. Like a lot of times these big time trades, they're looking for another contract. Like it doesn't work 1-to-1. Be a facilitator in that try to get into 3-way team deals. Use that. Say, hey, we'll throw in Terry's expiring. And he's gone in the year. He fills that role for your team, and just give me a second for throwing that in. Give me a couple seconds for throwing in an expiring. If you take a longer deal, like obviously wait for the right deal to come along. If not, just let him walk. You shouldn't pay to get off Terry. He's expiring. But like think like that. Like that's something that they haven't really done in the past, and that's an easy way to get assets.
But real quick, Chad is saying, why do we hate Alec Burks so much? He stays.
Oh, we don't hate Burks.
Like we just said, I don't hate Burks, but they have 14 players under contract. And if they have 14 players under contract, that leaves one more. And if I have to pick between Duncan Robinson or Alec Burks at a minimum, I just gave you all the reasons why I would rather have Duncan Robinson.
But also, they usually keep the roster at 14. So it would surprise me if they went to 15 anyways.
And again, this is a special situation. By the way, Kevin Love making $4 million is very funny next season.
You can't just remove Terry and Jaime.
Yeah, they're like, just remove Terry and Jaime. That's not how this works. They're kind of stuck with those guys. Frankie, to your point about Rozier, I actually think they should play him. And I think there has to be a balance because, you want to give reps to Jaku. And I think Davion Mitchell is their starting point guard walking into camp. Unless Jaku takes it from him, which I'd be surprised, or Rozier. I think that's supposed going to let the point guards fight it out. But God, I think
Rozier winning the job.
If Rozier wins the job, Frankie, I would love Rozier to play well enough to win the job because that means that you can move him at the deadline.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? No, if he's productive for them. That's a long shot. But
I know it's just like I don't even really care if he does it because like. You've already re-signed Davion. You just selected Jaku. Like I feel like that would be like.
Hold on. Chat is like if Terry survives this offseason and still a Heat member, they're done. And everyone is. I hear a lot of people saying that. Guys, Terry Rozier is an expiring contract. You don't trade him and take back long-term money. You don't trade him and attach an asset. You either. You're done with him after this season and you get some cap relief, which I'm sure that they would like, or at the deadline, you trade him. You don't stretch it. You don't waive and stretch him. You don't trade him to trade him. You guys, we've done this before.
We literally
you
got
guys,
Terry this way.
Literally, you guys didn't like Kyle Lowry, and this is how they got. You guys, Ryan Anderson, Tyler Johnson. We have a long history of this. They cannot do that anymore. Just because we don't like a guy doesn't mean that they have to hurt their future to get rid of him. That he has 1 year left on his deal. You could just tell him to go home and don't show up to work if it's that bad. But they cannot. They should play him. They should try to play him. They should try to get any kind of value for him. And
if you can't trade him by the deadline too, just buy him out. And
yeah, you can buy him out. Whatever you do, whatever you got to do. But you do not just trade him to trade him.
Yeah, you don't even try to, unless he's willing to give up a lot right now. You don't even buy him out now.
No way. Absolutely no way. And he's not. Why would somebody give up money and leave Miami?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, chat's like, get anything. Shit, just get. That's not how that works, bro.
But you guys think like would say this and then start complaining because the guy they got.
This is how we got into this because you guys said I don't care. I don't like Kyle Lowry. Just get him out and get me anybody. I don't care. And look what you got. Yeah. So the correct decision is to go to camp, see what you get out of him, which is what he did with Kyle. I mean, he were pretty done with him, and he went into camp and they were seeing, okay, compete for a spot, see what you got, and then they tried to trade him for a guy that they thought was going to be productive with a pick. So
I'm just saying, like, I don't think they should let him realistically compete for the starting job. Like, it should be a 2-man race and him on the outside as a depth piece.
I think that Spo will give him the chance.
I wouldn't be surprised if Spo did that. Like, I'm not disagreeing with
that's not right or wrong, but I think that they'll. But Franky, you don't think that they want to see if they can get a little value for him?
I don't think there's much to get from him.
I mean, he's not. What is he? 32? He's 31 years old. It's not like that old.
No, he's not. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he bounced back. This was really an outlier season for him, but I'm saying,
he was
like,
particularly bad. Yeah,
he was particularly bad, and it was everything about him. But you've invested money in your cap and bringing Davion back, and you just drafted a first rounder. Like, the minutes should go to them first. I
don't disagree. I just think that, like, if he plays us with the intention to move him, and if February comes by, then you bench him.
Yeah, I'm not saying like if one of those guys is hurt or in foul trouble, you don't play Terry at all. I'm saying they should be priority 1 and 2.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And that's kind of where we are. Shout out to Alec Burke, who I don't think will be back. I thought had a really good season with Miami last year. Yeah. Isaiah Stevens, I think draft big guys thought he had a little promise.
Yeah, he was okay. He showed out in the summer league, and he played decent in the G League too.
And Josh Christopher, another guy, but I think that Keshad Johnson, who will stay with the Heat next season, is the best of that group, and I hope that we get to see a little bit more of him. That'll be more of a season preview, not an off-season preview. Franky, let's talk a little bit about let's close out this conversation and move on by finishing up with Davion. Davion Mitchell, great figure, 2 years. I would have liked 3, maybe the team option on the 3rd year. A bit of a prove it deal for him. I think that the concern with him is the shaky shooting. Is he really that level of shooter that he was for the Heat last season? He shot 44% on threes on about 3 a game. His highest, in his career by far. Yeah. He has trended up though, shot 31, 32, 36, 35, 36, 36, and then 44 for Miami. So you saw the increase in his shooting ability. I don't think he'd fall back down too low. I think he was kind of trending to be a reliable shooter. Obviously, we know what he does defensively, and I think he gives them a really good ball handler who gets in the lane.
Yeah, he provides playmaking, defense, energy. Like, they're not winning anything right now, but like you see Indiana signed TJ McConnell like 5 years ago, and they just started adding good players, and that's eventually it paid us off. So I think he's a good player, potential 2-way player if the shot continues to fall. And there's definitely value in that. He fits what they do, fits what they want to do. if they want to play slow, he can manage the offense, protect the ball, and be a general. If they want to play faster, he can run a fast break and make some plays, and that there's absolute value in that. And he's a guy too that like can play on or off ball. So if Tyler's running the offense, he can space. He knows what to do with the ball. Doesn't hold the ball very long, makes quick decisions. And you can play him with Yaku too if you need another a point of attack defender while he's in the game.
I think that he makes a lot of sense with Yaku too because of all that you said about on and off ball. I think Yaku's such a good shooter, and you kind of see him being a passer, secondary passer off kind of bent defenses and stuff like that. I think you guys have talked a lot about his turnover problems. I know you had a pod on with who's the guest? Adrian?
Antonio Diaz out of Eurohoop Scouting. Great pod.
Fantastic. And you guys talked all about it. And take out that if you want more on Yaku's kind of strengths and weaknesses. But I think having a really strong defender next to him is really good. I think also for Tyler, right? I think like kind of serves both. And we'll talk more about kind of the encore fit when we start previewing and stuff. But I thought Davion's stuff was important to talk about. 2 years for 24. Honestly, that's a starting, for a starter, that's a steal. Really, a player of his level is a steal. I think that's really, really good.
Yeah.
I would have liked the third year, but I understand that he wanted flexibility and they want a bit of a prove it.
It probably also was they probably said only 2 years and we don't even go to free agency. That's very likely something that might have been on Davion and his agent's mind there.
I'm sure he likes it too. And I think that I think a guy like him fits the organization really well. And I'm sure that he's like, this is where I want to be. And again, that's a great figure for their captaining. And we talked about $14 million or the tax line. Now that's going to be a really important figure looking at the Robinson contract and what they do if they sign and trade him, which that could be a possibility again. I mean, hard to tell what they do with that, but that's something that we're going to have to kind of look out for. And we'll be live, by the way, tomorrow when free agency starts. We might go an hour after to kind of let stuff build up and have stuff to react to and talk about. But we'll be on tomorrow to kind of break down free agency and all the stuff that's actually happening. I'm sure we'll have a lot more clarity on all that stuff. Of course, as soon as we get off, something's going to happen and somebody's going to get traded or something. But you know how it gets worked. Chat just hates. I love chat because you'll be talking, you'll give all the reasons why something's reasonable, and then they go, "Hope Duncan Robinson doesn't get re-signed." One of the worst contracts ever given in the NBA. This is frankly not true.
Hey, man. I looked this up today. From 2020 to 2023, Duncan was fourth on the Heat behind Jimmy, Bam, and Goran in 20-point playoff games. He was a humongous part of those runs. And I still think if Spo doesn't fucking stop playing him completely in the playoffs in 22, they might have beaten the Celtics.
Duncan Robinson last season made almost $20 million. The people that made similar figure, Jakob Poeltl, Josh Hart, Jusuf Nurkic, Harrison Barnes, Colin Sexton, Malik Monk, Jared Allen. Like, okay, that's fine. That's around the kind of player he is. You know what I mean? Like, you got a Norman Powell for $20 million. That's really good and a steal, but Marcus Smart at 21, KCP at 21, Dylan Brooks at 22, Kyle Kuzma at 22. You know what I mean? DeAndre Hunter at 23. Like, those are all like,
I think like Moose says this all the time. Like, some people just haven't adjusted their salary expectations. Like, they're still thinking 2011 a max contract was like 16 million per year. Like, it's not like that anymore.
Chat's like, Powell's awesome. I know Powell's awesome. That's why I said he's a steal at 20, because 20 is a steal for a player of that production. Yeah. But like, as you said, Powell is the outlier in that name, in that mix of names. And by the way, Duncan Robinson contributed on finals teams. Duncan Robinson, if it's not for the only game they won in the Denver finals, it's because Duncan Robinson was fucking awesome and won them that game. You know what I mean? Like, in the Lakers series, he was really big. Like, he's helped them a lot. He's helped them a lot in the playoffs. I don't really want to hear it. I mean, I think that he has issues like everybody, but yeah. So shout out to Duncan. We'll be on a really probably a team-friendly deal if he's back here. Stuff like that. Franky, the other big thing to kind of look forward to tomorrow is we already talked about Rozier and kind of why I don't think a trade is likely. Mm-hmm. He's just was so bad last season. I don't see a world where anybody wants him.
Right.
You know, this is not a way unless Miami gives an asset.
Right. It would have to be like swapping bad contracts. Like one, I couldn't even find one that I was like, this makes sense for both teams. Like our bad contract for your bad contract, or something like that.
Well,
but
remember that the contract has to be like with, you know, where Miami doesn't get over the tax.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just meant like somebody, we don't want to play this guy anymore. You don't want to play that guy anymore. We'll switch.
Let's play a game. Players around Rozier's contract at $26 million. Tobias Harris, John Collins. Tobias Harris, free agent next year. John Collins, free agent next year. So I'm only going to say the expirings. Mikal Bridges, they're not getting Mikal Bridges.
No.
I don't want John Collins.
Maybe they wouldn't do Collins.
They wouldn't do Collins anyway.
They have enough point guards.
Tobias Harris, they wouldn't do that for Terry Rozier anyway. Jaren Jackson Jr., Memphis is not doing that. Marcus Smart, that's one that you can go maybe, but why would they take on more money? And that's just like, I don't know. Why would they do that? I would probably take a flyer on that.
They would ask for something back. And
that goes any of them. You say any of them, the other teams aren't doing that.
Yeah.
That's what you guys will. You want to get rid of your piece of shit when other teams don't want a piece of shit.
They think it's 2K where you just do Trade Finder and you're like, we'll take it.
That's it. You know, like KCP has a $21 million option that he will certainly opt in for.
Yeah.
I'd probably do Marcus Smart. There's Vucevic at 21, but now 21, 26. The trade now you're really stretching what you can trade match, and now a team's going to take a lot more salary and stuff like that. So, don't think that there's a big realistic possibility for this offseason unless Terry Rozier gets a little bit of value in the season or whatever. So, moving on from Terry, Andrew Wiggins. The Lakers have liked Wiggins, and I thought it was pretty interesting how Lakers beat writers have kind of said that trade talks have stalled with Miami.
Well, explain it because I don't think we've discussed this at all.
Well, Wiggins is on the trade block. He's been linked to the Lakers. LeBron is really upset with the Lakers front office.
There was a report over the weekend from Anthony Irwin on
I was finding the tweet.
Twitter.
Yeah.
I forget what his website is. If you could find that to plug it. But he was talking about right before the draft, the clutch points. Okay, thank you. That the Lakers and the Heat were in discussions. That they were holding out because the Heat were asking for a future first round pick in return, and that's kind of where talks have stalled.
Which honestly, I'm really happy that Miami is being a hard ass about I want a fucking pick. You're not just getting my guy for a poo-poo platter.
Right.
You have to give me something, and
you're getting the best player in this trade. Like, give me something for it.
Yeah, literally, like we're gonna take your pile of shit, and you need to give us something to take your pile of shit because I think Andrew Wiggins is still good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Andrew Wiggins is a bad player, and they have 2 years left of Andrew Wiggins, and somebody will take him, whether it's this year or next year, or he just expires or whatever. You don't need to take stuff that you don't want, and I think people want them to. You have to trade for stuff that is valuable, not for stuff you don't want. And by the way, they don't have roster spots to take 4 Laker players, right? So the trade was like 3. You know, I've seen a lot of permutations of trades, and Miami takes back 3 players. They can't do that, you know,
right?
So. I like Miami being pretty adamant of getting a pick. I think it's really new for this front office to do that. I haven't seen them do that. I've never seen them do that.
I mean, they haven't. The Jimmy trade was the first time they got a first round pick back in a trade since 2008.
That's hilarious.
That was like 8 CBAs ago.
That's hilarious.
I think Khalil Ware was like 4 years old when that fucking happened. It's great that if they're finally doing that, like they're adjusting. That's a welcome change and growth there, because that's why they fall short in all these trade negotiations. They don't have picks to trade because they keep using them for minor deals.
So they, you know, I don't think I'd take seconds for Wiggins. I think you got to beat.
No. He's a legitimate starting level quality player. This isn't like a guy who's maybe a starter on the right team or in the right role, like a Highsmith is. No, Wiggins is a legitimate 2-way starter, and
he's 30. So
yeah,
you know he'll you know he's age 32 by the end of the contract. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not like
it's not even bad money either. Like it's starting quality money. Like he's like what, like 28 million.
He won a championship 2 years ago as like the second best player. You know, it's like we're not far removed from that. I think this is a bad fit for him.
Yeah,
but I think he could help a team. I think he'd be really good on the Lakers. I
He
think
would
him with
be a
Luka
stud with
would
them.
be
Oh my
awesome.
God.
Him, Luka, and LeBron would be awesome. So, and I understand the Lakers being like, I can't trade a first round pick for Andrew Wiggins, and I understand that. I understand
That's fair.
team, but I think the Heat are doing a really good job, and I think it kind of speaks, which is why I have a little more optimism for this offseason, because I think a lot of fans are upset. And listen, at the end of the day, they're going to run some version of this back. I just think that you can run it back with a different mentality.
Yeah.
You can run it back with the mentality of, we are going to play our young players more. We are going to try to get value out of our veterans and move them at the deadline if we have to. We're not going to keep, we're not going to keep doing this kick the can thing. And somebody could say, re-signing Duncan Robinson's a bit of kicking the can. You're not wrong. Should they have tried to trade Duncan Robinson last season? I think so. I think trading Duncan Robinson last season would have made sense. Maybe teams didn't want the ETO or whatever, but I think now on this new deal, it makes a lot more sense. I could see them trying to do the same thing with Haywood Highsmith, but you can, the one thing I'd say is that if you're the Heat, you can't be Danny Ainge.
Right.
You can't just keep signing guys to great contracts and you're kind of a mid team and you never move them. Right, you have to cash in on some of these guys, so you should trade Duncan Robinson.
You said Danny Ainge. That's just what the Heat do.
Like Danny Ainge, we made fun of him for years for doing that, but like they're getting that reputation, and they have to cash in these guys, right? So Wiggins, they can't just. I don't think they should just let him expire. They have to try to cash him in and be aggressive. Find a trade partner, be aggressive at the deadline, make your calls, find a suitor and get him out of here, get him to a team, get some stuff back for him. And I don't think that they have to rebuild through this long period, Franky. I think we've talked about quite a few guys that they can move for stuff, and they have young players. They have a lot of their picks. They only owe one more pick, now, which, the problem is trading picks.
Yeah.
You can't trade a lot of the picks, but you own all of them except for one.
And that was what the reported trade for Wiggins was. They were trying to get a 2027 pick. So that even if that conveys that they can fulfill the Stepien rule and have all those picks and still use those picks for trades if they need it.
Absolutely. And I don't think they're ready to be looking at stars, but you want to be ready,
Yeah.
right? You want to have, if Ware continues to develop and is a really good, legitimate starting center, and Jaku looks like he's a really promising guard, and whatever Nico's figure is next year, if he's looking good, you have like a core of guys that are like, if you have Davion Mitchell, you know what I mean? You have Bam. Now, you find salary, if it's Tyler, if it's whatever, and all of a sudden you have like a pretty decent core. And I think,
or if one of these guys pops, if one of these guys is the star that they've been looking for, and with
Pell Larson is another guy, Gashad Johnson. Those are potential. You laughing?
No, I'm laughing because I said is the star. You said Pell Larson.
Yeah, where's Lou?
Where's Lou?
Where's Lou? But like, you what I've argued and what I want them to do is create the foundation. Get the role guys here on good money, right? Before you got to pay them. Get what you need.
Yeah.
Get picks. Amass assets. Get second round picks. You've never liked second round picks. If Duncan Robinson gets you 2 second round picks, you trade Duncan Robinson for 2 second round picks. You trade Haywood Highsmith for 2 second round picks, 3 second round picks. Guys, you can get stuff. If you start collecting these guys, not only do you get more shots at the draft, you guys kill at undrafted free agents. Imagine what you do in the second round.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my argument for their offseason. And I think we're in agreement. I don't think the fans should overreact to running it back. But like we said, there has to be an attitude shift about what running it back means. It means playing your young players more. It means finding suitors for your veterans by the deadline. It's finding mid-maxing your value on your roster while you can still compete. I don't even say that I would like them to be bad next year and tank, but like whatever. If you play all your young guys and if you're playing better than expected, you don't have to start saying, okay, well, Bam can't play for 15 games or something. I don't think that's right either. But you play your young guys, and if they're better than you think, then you compete for a playing spot with your young guys. And that happened organically and naturally, just pure natty, a pure natty playing spot. And I think that's okay. And it'll feel different. I promise.
Yeah, it's like the main thing is the attitude shift. If they run this back mostly because they're trying to fucking buy guys they can't afford, then that's ridiculous, and they should get shamed. If they're trying, if they, nobody's meeting their price for Wiggins and it's reasonable, that's a different thing. But they also have to maintain that philosophy, because we've seen them in the past have that mindset where we want the flexibility, we want them to meet our price, and then within 1 year they're like, you know what, we didn't like that idea, we're gonna do something else instead, and it really fucks them. So they have to be disciplined about this and hold firm on these prices if they're fair. But I think 1 first for Wiggins is absolutely fair. That's a starting quality player. I think it'll be a lot more reasonable with at the deadline for teams, or an injury shakes up, something like that. Even if you have to hold it in for next year, and right before the draft, we see a lot of teams trade, know that they don't have the lottery anymore. They know they have the 15th pick, and they'll be like, you know what, we're going to trade Wiggins now. We want Wiggins. Like that's what teams do a lot. The fucking Trey Man and the 22nd pick just went in as just for taking Trey Man. That was part of a deal this year. So like you can make it happen. You just have to move it when it's available.
Make calls, be aggressive, do stuff.
Yeah.
Don't just get in the room, leave the room with stuff. And I think fans are right for being upset and annoyed. I just think that, I see an attitude shift, and maybe I'm being optimistic. And I'll be upset if February rolls around and none of these guys are gone and they're just, competing for the 7th seed, and they're playing all these vets, and Jaku's barely played, and Nico's still not, playing consistently. I'd be upset. I would be upset. So let's see what the vibe is. Let's see what the direction is. Franky, let's close with Tyler Herro, because I don't think trading Bam is going to be an option for the organization. And I frankly don't think trading Herro is going to be on the table for them right now. I think trading Herro should be on the table. And I've gotten shit on this on Twitter where people are like, well, because Herro fans, I think, are right and are like, well, if you trade Herro, you should trade Bam. And I don't think that that's like wrong. And I think that like if Bam looks around and says, I don't want to be here for a rebuild, you say, okay, big guy, where do you want to go? Like, I believe in that. I don't think Bam would do that. I think Bam wants to retire a Heat player. I think this organization, I think the culture, I think being kind of Udonis's
apprentice,
successor matters.
Padawan.
It's like I was looking, successor was the word I was looking. The succession of captainhood, captainship. I think that matters to him. I genuinely think that matters to him, and I think he'd be here for a rebuild. He's competed throughout his rookie year, pretty much on. I mean, after his rookie year, pretty much on. So Tyler's a guy that I think you can get stuff for. I think if we're talking, I think you can get 2 picks for Tyler. I think you can get 2 picks and some stuff. And I think it'd be worth the organization shopping him, mostly not because I think he's a bad player. I think he's actually a good player, which is why I think he has value. I think he's a really good scorer. I think he's improved every single year that he's been in the league. I've been very proud. I've been very wrong about him, and I've been very proud of him. And I don't say that they should trade him because I think he's bad or because I don't want him here. I just view him as the way for them to get better in the long term, because I just don't think he can. They have so many issues, and he's the guy that can get them a lot of stuff to fix those issues.
It's also though, G, that like if they should know long term what's their real objective. Learn from the Jimmy mistake. They were not going to pay Jimmy, and they, instead of selling high and moving him early, they waited too long and let the situation get ugly. Partly, large part Jimmy's fault as well, but also large part their fault. And I'm not expecting Tyler to do anything like that, like what Jimmy did and quit on the team and everything. But I think you make it a lot easier moving it early if you're not long-term looking to keep him. And if you guys are really far apart in talks salary wise for the extension, you should know what the deal is right then at that point. But if the plan is to keep him and you want to extend them, you guys are close and you want to decide the actual figures later. Like the goal should be, how can we get the Tyler and Bam build to work? Too many years of this last 5 years or so, it's Jimmy, Bam. you guys complement the guys around you. And instead of like, let's compliment Jimmy and Bam. And I don't want another thing, another 5 years. I don't think the fans want another 5 years of them of the best players on the team having to compliment everyone else and plug holes everywhere else. Fill your holes. Get him a real point guard. If it's not Davion, if it's not Jaku, get him a point guard that can guard point of attack and shoot the three and playmaking. So take some of the ball handling responsibility and decision making responsibility off of his plate. Get him a three. If Bam and Ware is the front court you want to start, we need a three that can really shoot the ball and not just we're okay and with defend. Him and defend. Like you need to complement your fucking lineups. Like
Haywood, Highsmith.
Yeah, exactly. Like a supercharged Haywood. But like they're too often they're focused on one guy fixing all these holes. Like we're waiting for Dame, we're waiting for Donovan, we're waiting for KD. Those guys aren't going to plug all those holes, even if you got them.
That was my thing with Durant, where like they had so many problems on offense that I'm like, Durant.
He helps absolutely, but
he's not a playmaker. He's not getting to the rim. You have more issues than people. Just like guy puts ball in basket, good, which is correct, but there's a process to being a good offensive team.
Right. Like I remember before after the Terry trade, I had people ask me, they have 4 guys who average 20 and they can't fucking break 100. What's going on with that? Because it's not fantasy basketball.
Yeah.
Like there's fit matters.
That's a great, Franky. That is a fantastic example.
Yeah. Like they were like, they're like, now everyone's not averaging the same because everyone's roles are different. You can't just score 20 points on 16 shots, have that 4 different ways. Like that's too many shots, and the Heat don't play that fast to make up the possessions. So like you have to be realistic about that kind of fit and stuff. And frankly, the Heat haven't been very realistic about their own assets or their own goals and stuff because Spo, Jimmy, and Bam have over succeeded expectation every single time, almost every time when they're healthy.
Yeah. No, I'm in total agreement. I think that kind of goes into like they need to pick a direction. Like, is the direction Herro? Is it not? And I think kind of to your point about the contract, where I think you know what he's going to ask for, and I think at this point, I think we know what around. He's only 26, but I think we all know around the player
20,
he is.
I think 25. Yeah,
he'll be age 26 for 2025.
Yeah, it will be January.
So if I'm the organization, I think like you just said, you know what you're willing to spend, and maybe they say if you make all NBA, then we'll talk. Which again, I think that's a little bit of kicking the can, and that's also kind of like hedging your bets. Like believe in something or don't, but you cannot. I think part of their issue is they wait too long to make decisions, and these guys lose value because nobody's gonna want him with an extension due. You have to make a decision, and I think that some of those decisions are difficult, and I think Memphis had to make a tough decision to trade Desmond Bane. There's Oklahoma City had to make a tough decision to trade Russell Westbrook and Paul George, a team that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Certainly better than what you have. And by the way, Russell Westbrook won an MVP, and who was better than Tyler Herro, and Paul George was second or third in MVP voting, also better than Tyler Herro, and Bam for that matter. You know what I mean?
But also, it's just that they Bill Belichick once said, it's better to be a year early and get rid of a guy than a year late.
I agree.
And they are a year late so often, and especially with the top guys. With it happened. Look, I'm sorry, G, but it happened with Kyle.
No, I agree.
Yeah, but I'm saying like it happened with Kyle. It happened with Jimmy. It can't happen with Tyler as well. Like if they know their decision, if their goal is to build around Tyler, make it fit. You've done Tyler a disservice since you've named him a starter, because you haven't tried to make it work. You haven't tried to get a point guard. You're constantly kicking the can down the road, trying to get this big answer. It's like I'm not gonna fucking start saving money because I'm waiting on this lottery ticket to fucking hit.
Chat says Belichick also several years early picking his new girlfriend.
Feels like the draft,
Well done. Well done. Yeah, you're right. So I think I think the hero discourse can get nasty, and I think fans of hero justifiably get upset because they're like, I hate that my guy's in trade rumors because I think he's really performed, and that's right, and that's why I think that trading him off a career season is the smartest thing to do. Sell high, baby, sell high. And again, and I think there's a real thing happening because I think I've talked to other people who are close to other organizations, and they've told me the same thing a lot. Teams don't buy the Miami Heat stuff sometimes. They think that they don't buy that a player is going to leave here and be as productive because a lot of times they're not. I think Max is an exception, but a lot of times guys leave here and aren't very good. And they think that there's an infrastructure here that matters and they don't like spending on Heat guys. And I've heard that whether or not you believe that to be valid, I'm not saying support or not. I'm just saying that's what people have told me.
I believe it, G. And Ethan from Ethan Skolnick from 5 Reasons Sports has reiterated that as well, and he believes that as well. I think that's because the Heat wait to fucking sell low on all of these fuckers.
I agree.
They never keep anybody whose body is functioning and they're still hitting above their weight. The only guy they tried to do was Caleb Martin, and you see how that worked out. But like those guys, like Luol Deng left when he was they weren't going to compete with that cash, and he was already a fucking shell of himself. Uncle Lou, like the only guys like that they didn't choose to leave is like LeBron and stuff like that, and like they don't have an option there. Or like everybody that leaves is like we're done with that guy. We can't wait to get rid of the guy. When do they lose a guy that they want to keep? You know, it like never happens.
Jimmy, but that could also.
But at that point, they didn't want him either.
Yeah. Dwayne,
they didn't want him at that contract. They lowballed him.
I mean, they almost lost Chris that offseason too. But
RIP.
Yeah, so where's Chris Bosh? Where in the world is Chris Bosh? Where in the world is Chris Bosh?
The graphics, Chris Bosh in a Carmen Sandiego outfit.
Houston signs Jabari Smith Jr. for 5 years, $122 million. It's a lot of years.
That's Tyler Herro money.
That's Tyler Herro money. So that's kind of our spiel on Herro. It's our spiel on the offseason. We will be back tomorrow. Frankie, what time does free agency start? Is it 6?
I saw 5. Let me make sure.
5? That's early, bro. Well, whatever. 5, 6, whenever it starts, you'll know because you'll see it on Twitter. We will be live. We will put an announcement tomorrow.
6 p.m. Eastern time.
6 p.m. Eastern. We might go live at 7. We'll talk internally to see if we want to give it an hour, maybe half an hour to let some news trickle in. I don't know how much the Heat are going to do, but we'll talk about it. We'll try to get some guests on and stuff like that. Appreciate you guys for rocking with us on a Sunday. I'll kind of soft launch the announcement. I saw somebody earlier say, "Is Miami Heat beat making any offseason acquisitions?" I've never done this. I've done the podcast for what is it, 13 years now. I think I've only done this once before, but I'm kind of putting this out there to the audience. If you'd like to be involved with what we do, if you want to help us in capacities, I mean, we could use a lot of work. I think it's no secret that a lot of people have moved on to different parts of their lives, and people don't podcast forever. It's just Brian, Alf, and I. And we could use a little more help around here in a lot of things. Whether you're interested in production, you want to learn production and want to help us, if you want to help clip our shows and do social media work for us, or if you have maybe interest in being an analyst and stuff like that, and you have equipment and are ready to go, reach out to us. Reach out to us on Twitter. Reach out to us via email, heatbeatmiami@gmail.com. Send a resume, send a tape. Or again, if you want production help, we could really use a lot of production help and social media help, clipping the show and stuff like that. If you're a big fan and you want to help with that.
If you're good at designing graphics,
if you know Photoshop,
yes.
I have a lot of templates and you could really help. And really, if you want to learn, I don't like to be self-involved, but I've self-taught myself a lot of things during the time that I've done this show. I know the entire Adobe suite. I can video edit. I can use After Effects. I have a lot of Photoshop. And if you have an interest in learning and want to help, please reach out, because even if you don't have a lot of experience in production stuff, I can teach you, I can help you, and you can help us. And then hopefully you could take that and go do something else if you want, make more money. We run on very small margins. We always, pay people So they are compensated jobs, for the most part. So please reach out if you're interested in helping. And we'll talk. Chat says Smeets Smolnik needs to be on the show with that name. We can never see his face. It'll really ruin the mystique. We will see you tomorrow. Peace.